Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 185, and I've totally lost track of what number we are through the Council of Elrond. Prayer. But anyway, we've been doing a Council of Elrond for a while, but we are close now. We are 6 slides from the very end. It's 61 today? Okay, there we are. 61. Our 61st session on the Council of Elrond, and we are getting close to the end now. Thank you for joining me. Before we start, just a quick announcement. Reminder, Mythmoot is coming up. There's a lot of Mythmoot things that are happening and that we're talking about. I'm really excited about Mythmoot. So we should be having the schedule posted soon. That will be coming out soon. Look for more information on Mythmoot before very long. And we're going to Yeah. That was the main thing. Looking out for Mythmoot. Also, our summer session at Signum has started up this past week, and we're coming up to this weekend is the end of registration. So if you still wanted to enroll to like audit our Star Trek class or something like that, there's still a little bit of time, but I would urge you to do that. And of course, another thing, a much more proximate thing. Okay, not more proximate than the summer semester, which is already happening, but the Prancing Pony podcast, my friends over at the Prancing Pony podcast are having their first digital moot this weekend, which is going to be a lot of fun. I'm planning to be there, and I'm sure many of you will as well. So I just wanted to recommend that. You can go to the Prancing Pony podcast website and find all the information on that. It's going to be a pretty cool time, I think. I've also heard there's going to be a dramatic reenactment of the Council of Elrond or something. And my only question is, how are they going to do that in less than a year and a half? I don't understand, but it should be cool anyway. That's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, I'm excited about that and hoping to see many of you guys there around this weekend. Mad Violinist says they'll do it at 1x, right? You mean as opposed to 0.05x like we've been doing? Anyway, but cool. Yeah. So, all right, let's one last thing about Mythmoot. Remember that we're not, even though we're going to be there in person, we're not going to be selling Moot merchandise at the Moot. We're doing all of our Moot merchandise digitally. So if you want a t-shirt or a mask or whatever else, you can get lots of different kinds of apparel options and things like that. If you want any Mythmoot merch to have in time for the Moot, you need to order in advance. So the merch site is open. There's still plenty of time to order things and have them delivered in time. But you should do that sooner rather than later to make sure that you get it in time for the Moot if you want to make sure that it's there. So, nice. You got some Recover, Escape, Consolation merch. Yeah. No, that's good. I personally, I was toying with that one, Matt. I almost got that one. But my wife got me a Cauldron of Story apron for Christmas, which I wear all the time. I cook a lot, so. And I had this ratty old apron that I sometimes use when I'm cooking something particularly messy. So I got the Cauldron of Story one. It's really cool. But anyway, yes, we have a separate site for the Mythmoot merch. So anyway, that's where we're headed there. Okay. So, all right. Yes. Sorry. Okay. What now? Before we start, there's a comment I wanted to share with you guys. I got an email from a longtime friend of Signum, Peter Ribsky, and he was reflecting on our last couple sessions. And he said, as I listened to the discussion from last week's class about the 3 elven rings and the things that the elves of Middle-earth have in some measure gained, though with sorrow, I had one recurring thought. Boromir kind of had a point. He says if Boromir had knowledge of the 3 and how they were being used, he might have interpreted some of Elrond's earlier words like this. "Then be comforted," said Elrond, "for there are other powers and realms that you know not. When Gilgalad's ring passed to me, I made sure to take it home so that my elves could tra-la-la-lolly in peace, beauty, and bliss. And that still continues while you and Faramir hold off the Nine and practice swimming in armor. Sure, I could have helped those in Gondor to keep the forces of Mordor from returning, but that was so Gilgalad, and I saw how that ended. Still, could you imagine if I had made my home in, say, Ithilien instead of Rivendell? I did end up with the most powerful ring. Perhaps I could have used it to transform the dead marshes or the wastes. Galadriel had one too, and she used it to sing beautiful gardens into being in Lothlorien. Maybe she would have had even better luck than me in those places. But no, she wanted to rule an already existing kingdom, and the power of her ring certainly enabled that. I've heard it said that Lothlorien won't fall as long as Galadriel is there with the ring. Unless Sauron himself comes forth. That's probably just marketing. Still, I bet you guys had something like that in Minas Tirith, don't you? Well, at least Gandalf is using his ring. That's probably why we're even here today. He's been roaming all over Middle-earth trying to inspire all the peoples to stand against the darkness. But man, just think of the ships Círdan could have built if he kept the ring to inspire his workforce instead. Now, that's obviously, Peter's joking about, this kind of thing, and sort of being tongue-in-cheek about this. He's not totally wrong either. Now, I want to kind of back up a second and say, the more I do think about it, the more I feel there is legitimate criticism to be levied against Elrond and Galadriel, especially. It's kind of like the more I think about the Elven rings, their making, their use, the less I like them. They just kind of seem like a bad idea from beginning to end. If anybody would like to take up a brief on behalf of the elf rings and their use, I'd be very interested in hearing that. Because, again, the more I think about it, the more, I was about to say sketchy. That's maybe too harsh. But dubious, I kind of find them really sort of from beginning to end. But at the same time, I don't want to sound too extreme about that. It's not like they're horrible. It's not like they're evil. And I also want to back up even a step further and say, if someone asked me the question, are you suggesting that Tolkien, was sort of intending us to be resistant to the elf rings, to be looking sort of sidelong at Elrond during this whole conversation? No, I don't think so. I think that Tolkien, Fourth Dauntless, sort of exactly what you were just saying there. The use of the three is fundamentally elvish. The isolated kingdom steeped in bliss and keeping memory of elder times recurs throughout elvish history, sometimes with the explicit blessing or even aid of the Valar. Yes, who themselves started that whole problem in the first place. Yeah, I agree. And it's often, not always, but often a problem. Gondolin is a classic example, right? Gondolin is one of the most, iconic, right? One of the most mythic, one of the most perfectly elvish things, right, in the history of Middle-earth. And yet, and it's not a bad thing. Like, this Gondolin's not horrible. Gondolin isn't evil. It's not like, Gondolin it's bad for it to have been, right? And yet, we can see, Turgon failed. Right, and his love for Gondolin is what caused him to fail. There's always there's always sort of challenges with that, problems with that. I don't think that Tolkien was unaware of those things. I mean, I think that he is. Again, and we can see it. We can see it from the question of, were the Valar even right to do the Valinor thing? Right, and to do the invite the elves over to Valinor in particular thing, right? He invites at various points questions about that, right? That's still an open question in his Legendarium, and he suggests even course, in some places he suggests it's not a mistake, but in others he suggests very clearly that it is. He clearly was kind of himself sort of going back and forth on that, or at least on how he'd present that question in the Legendarium. Exactly, JJ. I'm always trying to be careful not to lie with the tongue of Melkor. I'm kind of sensitive about that. But anyway, but yes, this impulse, it is a fundamentally elvish impulse, and it isn't wrong. I mean, Michael, as you were just saying, just a little bit ago, there you are. If you know you can never leave Middle-earth, why wouldn't you try to preserve it as best you can? Well, you know you can never leave Arda anyway. So yes, and that does mean I don't want to simply be urging everybody to kind of judge the elves from the human perspective, right? Like, you've got to be out there, you've got to accomplish something, you've got to be, and that's not the elves. Their relationship with the world is fundamentally different. But again, anyway, I think there's also a very clear argument to be made that preservationist impulse is swimming against the tide. This is not how the world is going. And I think it is no mistake that when Galadriel passes the test, right, when Galadriel does good, what doing good looks like is submitting to diminishment. I think that resistance, that attempt to preserve, not just preserve Middle-earth, but to preserve, like, the good old elvish days of Middle-earth, right? To keep them there, not just to remember them, but to cling to them, to create these little hyper-elf pockets, right? I don't think it's a good impulse. I really don't. I don't think it's a hideous impulse. I don't think it's horrible. But I think that it's... I do think it's problematic all the way down. Yeah. Okay. Good. Sorry, looking through so many comments. Yeah, good. Ray is, of course, thinking of the Curse of Mandos, quoting from the Curse of the Noldor, the Curse of the North, or the Prophecy of the North. Those that endure in Middle-earth and come not to Mandos shall grow weary of the world as with a great burden, and shall wane and become as shadows of regret before the younger race that cometh after. And Ray, it's really interesting to think about the application of that in these kinds of circumstances that we're discussing. Become as shadows of regret. So wait, does that mean that's like their punishment, right? In a sense, like that's what will happen. Is he sort of dooming them to become as shadows of regret? Or is this sort of a prophecy that, like, should you remain in Middle-earth, should you kind of continue to cling to things, you shall become as shadows of regret? Is that avoidable? Is it just you are destined no matter what happens, like shadows of regret, that's your destiny, right? Or is he foretelling, is that a sort of one possible outcome, right? And if it's one possible outcome, how could that be avoided? And I can't help but think that the answer to that, the answer to how do you avoid as an elf in Middle-earth who hasn't gone to the halls of Mandos, how do you avoid becoming as a shadow of regret before the younger race that cometh after? And I can't help but think the answer is not stop the flow of time and prevent the elder days from passing away by, the strength of your, native power and your, ringcraft. I don't think that's the right answer. I really don't. Yeah. Now, Drowsnake is saying, could they instead have made, instead of making these little pockets of elfendom, right, could they instead have made the entirety of Middle-earth 1% more elvish? Yeah, well, Drowsnake, that's ultimately my Tongue of Melkor argument. Like, that's what I think that the Legendarium as a whole suggests that could have happened had the Valar not done the thing that they did, had they not invited the Eldar to come live with them, had they not started the whole hoarding of bliss thing, right, trend, by inviting the elves to Valinor in the first place, because Iluvatar, I think, put them in Middle-earth on purpose. He could have had them awaken in Valinor, if that's where he wanted them. But it isn't where they were awakened. And, mightn't it have been better for them to remain in Middle-earth, blessing Middle-earth and working in Middle-earth, as perhaps it kind of seems maybe they were meant to do? That's always, anyway, been my feeling about that. And so, Drowsnake, I can't help but apply that same kind of thinking to the Rings of Power as well. Justin Beeman says the desire to shelter in isolated kingdoms serves Sauron's interests. In some ways, yeah. Now, here's one thing. I want to be a little cautious about this, though. When Elrond says, when Boromir gives his speech about, like, it would comfort us to know that other people are actually doing something and not just sitting around and sheltering behind us and having tea, paraphrase, then, and Elrond says, then be comforted, right? I don't think Elrond's just blowing smoke, right? And again, it's one of the reasons that I want to be careful not to go too far in the kind of satirical direction. And again, I loved Peter's commentary there. But I want to resist going too far in that direction. In part, I want to resist it because I'm tempted to do it, right? But I want to resist it. And this is one of the main reasons why. I think that I do not believe that when Elrond says, then be comforted, he doesn't mean it. He said, Boromir says it would comfort us to know that others were resisting the enemy with every power that they had. And Elrond says, then be comforted. We are, right? And I don't think he's just blowing smoke. I don't think that, he's speaking merely from a position of guilt, being like, well, I've been kind of keeping, using the power of my ring to bless myself and my people. And I've, not been actually doing a lick in the struggle with Sauron. I think that they are doing something. I don't know what exactly, but there's a lot that we don't know about the Elvish rings and how they work and what's going on with Galadriel. Galadriel is going to suggest that she is in a kind of conflict with Sauron and that she is resisting him, right? And I think that there may be more to that and that kind of thing than might perhaps appear on the surface. So anyway, I do think that we should be careful, again, not to be too salty about this. But Frumius Bujum says, how would it be different if the Valar themselves didn't retreat into an isolated kingdom? I hear you. I totally hear you. Now, again, like, it's a little it's complicated by their reaction to the Melkor situation, but it's challenging. I mean, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but the Silmarillion film project has been really a fascinating project that we've been doing now for like 6-7 years. When we did season 1 of the film project, which was basically from the Ain Elendil to the Chaining of Melkor, so it was all Valar, basically the whole time. One of the things that we're doing in kind of planning through our theoretical adaptation of the Silmarillion in very great detail is there are lots you find when you approach the text from that perspective and you think about how, what has to happen, what would have to happen in an adaptation and how you would do an adaptation. One of the things that happens all the time is that you find yourself confronted with interpretive questions that you never really make when you're just sort of more passively reading the text, when you're not engaging with it sort of creatively in that way. And for me, that was one of the biggest issues in season 1. The decision to retreat to Valinor after the burning of the lamps. So we had the burning of the lamps, like the destruction of the lamps. We had the destruction of the lamps happening early in the season. Well, not early. It was like halfway through the season, but so we had a whole half season after the destruction of the lamps. So the middle point in the season was the big decision, right? The Valar's big decision to go to Valinor. And so, it forced me to like defend that, right? To really kind of think like, what kind of rationale do we present? Why did the Valar do that? How can we make that seem like not only the logical choice, but the admirable choice, right? We don't want to lose, if we're doing a theoretical adaptation, right? We don't want our theoretical viewers to lose faith in the Valar, right? To lose confidence in the Valar. It was challenging. It's very challenging. And we had to bring in some rationales which aren't spelled out in the text. Now, there's a lot of scope for that because we're not given much of the Valar, of the motivations of the Valar. But anyway, it's a really interesting question. And Bjorning in Exile, I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. Bjorning in Exile says, I want to say again that I think Tolkien is inviting us to be skeptical of everybody at the council. If Boromir seems uncouth and proud, he's not wrong and has borne the brunt of Sauron's assault his whole life. If the elves seem supernatural, they are explicitly criticized for isolating and fleeing this mess that they made. Yes, I agree. I don't think that anybody really kind of gets off sort of free. We are invited to kind of think that through. Except Sam, right? Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Except for Sam. And Farmer Maggot, of course. Exactly. Yeah, very true. Very true. Anyway, okay, well, let's get back into things because we have some more. We come to my favorite moment in the council when it comes to argumentation and logic, right? The plan, right? Now, we've already been told the plan, right? Elrond's already laid it on the table, right? We must send the ring to the fire. Erestor, trying to bring things back in, right? Thus we return once more to the destroying of the ring, said Erestor. Subtext, let's stop talking about the three rings right now, right? I think we're all done with this conversation. Let's get back to our main point. Once again, Erestor, I'm telling you, Erestor really showing his value as a counselor here. Like he is, Elrond's straight up guy, all the way through. I mean, if he should totally get a raise if he gets paid. But not only is he extricating things from the awkward place that they had gotten, but let's bring things back to focus, right? Our choice here is what to do with the Ring of Power. And Elrond here has already said we must send the ring to the fire. Can we get back to that point now? We return once more to this destroying of the ring, and yet we come no nearer. What strength have we for the finding of the fire in which it was made? That is the path of despair, of folly, I would say, if the long wisdom of Elrond did not forbid me. And by the way, even that last sentence, right, where Erestor is the one to daringly open his mouth and say that like Elrond's plan sounds like foolishness. It sounds like folly. It is the opposite of wisdom, Elrond's plan, right? That's what it sounds like. It is the path of despair, of folly, I would say, if the long wisdom of Elrond did not forbid me. Again, I would say that Erestor is here. Do I think that Erestor is like, rising up against Elrond here? I absolutely do not. I again think that he's being Elrond's very solid second here. I think that Erestor is acknowledging something that everybody around the table's got to be thinking, right? Especially when you lay it out like he just did, right? Elrond has just said, here's what we have to do, right? We must send the ring to the fire, to Mordor. We must send the ring to the fire. And Erestor says, okay, let's return to this. And as we return to it, I'm sure everyone is going to be thinking, so I'm just going to say out loud, exactly. He's pre-butting the counter-argument, Gilgonthyr. To stop anybody else in the room from thinking, this is the dumbest plan I've ever heard, right? And maybe even especially, Boromir from thinking, like, this is the greatest, the wisdom of the greatest lore master in Middle-earth that I was told about. Seriously? I came a journey of 110 days to be told that I should just walk into Mordor, right? So he says, a folly I would say if the long wisdom of Elrond did not forbid me. I think it's important for him to put that out on the table, right? To say that explicitly, because you've got to know that others are thinking it, and not just Boromir, right? While complimenting Elrond, right, his long wisdom, right? Certainly nobody's gonna want to say it, but I mean, let's face this, right? This does not seem like a smart plan. What strength have we for the finding of the fire in which it was made? Now, I think I'm trying to figure out what Erestor means by that question exactly. What strength have we for the finding of the fire in which it was made? When he asks that, is he imagining an invasion? Is that what he's picturing there? When he says the finding of the fire, does he mean to find the fire the way that Gil-galad and Elendil and Círdan found the fire the last time, right? I mean, it took the army of the Last Alliance a lot of time and blood to get to the Cracks of Doom, which is where they got in the end, right? And that's where they fought Sauron in the end. Is that the plan? Yeah, that's just what Burning in Exile was thinking. I think so. Yeah, Gil-galad was saying finding rather than reaching. Don't they know its geographical location? Yes, they do, which is why I do not believe that he means finding in that sense. No, finding in the sense of to go there. Like to find yourself there, right? It's not to like search for. They know where the Cracks of Doom are. They've not moved. So that's not what he means. But again, I think, he says, how do we see them, right? How do we discover them? Good. Ardent Crayon is pointing to, I hope this letter finds you in good health. Yes. They want to find the Cracks of Doom in the same way that the letter has found you when you receive a letter. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly much closer to the usage. I've got to think that Erestor says when he says what strength have we, I assume that by the word, so I assume that finding, that's what he means by finding, like by, to find ourselves in that place, right? To reintroduce ourselves to the Cracks of Doom. Not like in the sense in which Gollum is going to introduce himself to the Cracks of Doom, but anyway, but the word strength, I think he means military strength. Yeah, good. Thank you. Frumius Bujum was looking it up in the OED. It's definition 1.3 of find, to succeed in obtaining something. Yeah, exactly. Right. And Aranas, I agree. Gollum does not find the Cracks of Doom in such good health. At least he is not in such good health for very long. But anyway, okay, exactly. Yes, strength. I assume by strength, he means military strength, right? When he's saying what strength have we for the finding of the fire, in which he's like, what armies can we raise? How could we possibly pull off the invasion? He's suggesting, he's sort of recalling here, right? Look, really Last Alliance, Last Alliance 2.0, didn't we already say that that was kind of off the table? That can't happen, right? I thought we had sort of agreed on that, right? So once again, Erestor doing what he does, right? He's not suggesting anything so much as clarifying the argument. Remember, he stepped into the whole Galdor uncomfortableness before, and now he's stepping into the Boromir uncomfortableness this time, and saying, all right. On the one hand, you've said we have to destroy the ring. On the other hand, we know we don't have the military strength to get to the fire, right? That is the path of despair. The idea of marching with an army to Mordor to get to achieve the cracks of doom and chuck the ring in, that is the path of despair. That could never work. We know that could never work. It barely worked last time, 3,000 years ago, and it's certainly not going to work now. It's the path of despair, of folly, I would say. So he doesn't have to say that, right? But what he does is he points out, and here again, I think he's doing as he was before. I think this is like a setup for Elrond's spike. Gandalf takes it and spikes it instead of Elrond, but I think that, again, Erestor is such a good first mate here. A folly, I would say, if the long wisdom of Elrond did not forbid me. Right? Again, I'm gonna say that to anticipate that objection. Is Erestor really wholly at his wit's end? Right? Does he have no idea? No, I think he has substantial faith in the long wisdom of Elrond. Right? I think that he feels confident that Elrond does at least, feel that he sees a way through this, right? But he is inviting Elrond to elaborate, right? Let's be clear to start with on the fact that your plan, Elrond, on the surface is a horrible plan, right? In fact, an entirely unworkable plan. Can everybody agree that's an entirely unworkable plan? Great. Okay. Having established that Elrond's suggested plan is entirely unworkable, let's now also, though, remember Elrond's long wisdom and say there must be an explanation to why his plan sounds like such a bad plan, right? So what is it? And I agree when he says that's the path of despair. I agree with all of you guys who are paraphrasing him to basically say there is no Amdir on this path, no hope in that sense. There's no reason to believe that things are going to turn out well if we execute that plan, right? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Right. Bjorning says, so the phrase of folly, I would say, if the long wisdom of Elrond did not forbid me, is actually empathy with the straw man counter-argument, not a gentle statement of disagreement. I think it's both. I mean, notice he goes out of his way to remind everyone of the long wisdom of Elrond, right? Now, don't be hasty, anybody. Just because Sir Elrond over here, like Lord Elrond, my boss, just articulated a plan, which is obviously on its surface a very bad plan. Let's remember that there might be more to it than appears, right? But yeah, I think that So do I think he's still kind of setting up Elrond? Yeah, I do still think he's setting up Elrond. Do I think he does not see the way? Yeah, I do. I suspect he may be quite genuinely... I don't think he's faking it. I don't think he's playing dumb when he's assuming, when he says, what strength have we for the finding of the fire in which it was made? I think he's legitimately saying, I don't understand. I don't see the plan because we can't do the army thing. So how can we collectively go, the good guys, go to Mordor and get the ring there? Gandalf's response: despair or folly, said Gandalf. It is not despair, for despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt. We do not. Let's pause there for a second. This is a famous moment, right? Famous line by Gandalf. Despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt. We do not. Isn't that interesting? Several of you guys were just saying, the point is you've got to go with Estel instead of Amdir, right? You've got to give up on Amdir, on optimism that it's going to work out, right? And we'll get there. I do think they're going to be headed in that direction, of course. But that's not Gandalf's first response. Gandalf's first response is, he says, no, hang on. Despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt. That's when you can still have Amdir. We don't know that things are not going to turn out well. We don't know that. Maybe we don't have much positive reason to believe that they will turn out well, but we don't know beyond all doubt that they will turn out badly. So yes, Bjorning, despair is an act of pride. I do think despair is more of an act of pride. Captain Mo, exactly. Denethor, yes. Denethor is the example. Pride and despair are paired, right, in Gandalf's assessment of Denethor, right? It is pride to believe that you see the ends, that you know for sure what's going to happen. Especially given that there have been many, many examples of things that looked... I mean, it's like... Haven't you ever heard of a eucatastrophe? Sometimes the end looks pretty certain. And yet, a eucatastrophe occurs, right? You don't know, but what the eagles might still come. Not to bring the ring to Mordor, but yeah, it's so yes, I do agree with you, Bjorning, that it is pride. That despair is a symptom of pride, because until the end comes, like absolutely comes, how many times in Tolkien's works do characters come to what looks like it really is the end, the absolute end, and yet it isn't, right? Frodo and Sam lying down to die on the slopes of Mount Doom, right? Actually keeling over, right? And losing consciousness. And then they wake up in the field of Cormallen, right? These kinds of things happen. No, the eucatastrophe might not save you. And it's not to say that you can always bank on the eucatastrophe, right? Eucatastrophe is, like, by definition, something you can't necessarily bank on. But the point is, you don't see the end beyond all doubt. When you're looking ahead and saying, I know how that's going to turn out and it's going to suck, right? And therefore, what's the point of anything? Set me on fire. That's pride. That is pride. Because you don't know the end beyond all doubt. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It's not to say that you can always count on the eucatastrophe to come. It's just that you can't say in advance, you can't ever say in advance that you know for sure what's going to happen. Yes, Mike, I agree. Mike says the thing that gets missed a little bit is that the Amdir sort of hope isn't bad. It's what you do when Amdir dries up that matters. Despair or Estel. Yes, exactly. Amdir is a great thing. It's an important thing. Estel is a higher thing. That is a higher form of hope. It's a more important form of hope. But yeah, it's not like there's nothing wrong with Amdir. Amdir is really good. Amdir is really important. And Gandalf's first response is, hang on now. Don't give up on Amdir. Right? There's no path of despair here. Right? Yeah, on paper, does it seem impossible? Sure. Absolutely it does. Right? Does that mean it is impossible? No. Because what we have on paper isn't everything. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. And we need to have the implication, we need to have the humility to submit to what actually happens. Remember how they got here. Remember the whole, here we are and here is the ring, right? The way in which we were talking before, in which like Providence has, darned if Providence hasn't brought about this whole situation, right? Here, Sauron's ring has just been landed among us in ways that we could never have possibly anticipated, right? So why should we, when trying to figure out what to do with it from here, think now we know how things are going to go? We could never have predicted that it would have come to this and how it came to this in the first place. How should we know how to predict where things are going to go from here? Right, and how the rest of this story is going to go. We don't know how the rest of the story is going to come out. We can't know how the rest of the story is going to come out. There is a sense in which all acts of faith are blind faith, because faith by definition can only happen when you cannot see the result. Right? When you don't know what is going to happen and you simply act out of hope in faith, not knowing what's going to happen. Because if you knew, it wouldn't be faith in the first place, right? There's always an element of blindness there. Anyway, let's keep going. We do not, he insists, we do not see the end beyond all doubt. So it's interesting. I find it interesting. This is the first rule that Gandalf lays down, right? And I think this is super important. Everything else that we talk about in this council, guys, as we're trying to figure out what to do, keep one thing in mind. Do not conclude that anything is necessarily impossible, right? We don't know how things will turn out. So we don't know the end beyond all doubt. It is wisdom to recognize necessity when all other courses have been weighed, though as folly it may appear to those who cling to false hope. It is wisdom to recognize necessity when all other courses have been weighed, though as folly it may appear to those who cling to false hope. Once again, is Gandalf's response mystical? Let us step forth in faith, since Providence has brought us to this point. That's not his argument. His argument is quite practical. We must recognize necessity when all other courses have been weighed. Let us proceed logically. We've weighed all of the possible courses, right? To hold the ring, right? To hide it, to keep it from Sauron by force. We've considered that. To ditch it, to put it forever beyond his reach, either because we're holding it or because we've chucked it in the sea or something like that, right? Or sent it to Valinor. We've considered all those things. Or to destroy it. Any other options? Anything else on the table? No? Okay. We can't send it to Valinor. It's no solution of the problem at all to throw it in the sea, right? They've already been over that. It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem, right? What solution do we have? We've been given this opportunity, and we can't, of course, use it against him, right? We've considered that option too. We can't use it. We can't hide it. We can't lose it. No choice, right? It reminds me of Bilbo's words in the beginning of chapter 5 when he's lost in the dark, right? Go back, impossible, right? Go sideways, can't. Go forward, only thing to do, right? That's kind of the similar sort of logic that Gandalf seems to be applying here, right? Exactly, Bjorning. It's the only way to win is to destroy the ring, right? The only chance they have, not only of winning in the sense of like surviving and overcoming in this moment, but defeating Sauron long term, is to destroy the ring. In fact, they've been given the unique opportunity to do that, right? Not just to make it through this particular war, right? But to win for good and all, to put an end to this menace, as Gandalf has said. So yeah, we should do that. We should. It's the only logical thing to do. We should seek to destroy the ring. Now, false hope. Though as folly it may appear to those who cling to false hope. What's he talking about there? Who's clinging to false hope? What are the false hopes that people might cling to? Right? What are the false hopes? Using the ring, military victory, the strength of Gondor? Yes. That an army is the way to defeat Sauron? Yes. The false hope that we can win the war in any way, with the ring or without the ring, right? Yes. They are going to be accused of folly, right? Denethor is going to accuse Gandalf of folly when he discovers what has happened, right? What Gandalf has done and the decision that he and Faramir have made, right? Denethor is going to accuse them exactly of folly because he clings to false hope. And Denethor is going to make that really clear. You'll remembering ahead, that Denethor is going to say, if we had this thing now here in Minas Tirith, I would not now, tremble within they wouldn't be so afraid if they had the Ring of Power, right? False hope. And therefore, the decision to make what at the very least, right, the conservative reading of the send the ring to Mordor plan has to be that it is phenomenally risky, right? Like at the very least, you have to say, this is a high risk plan, right? The odds of success on paper, really bad, really, really bad, right? And yet, so it's going to look like, if you cling to false hope, if you think there's an obvious other alternative, the ring can be used against Sauron, the ring can be concealed from Sauron indefinitely, we can win the war anyway, so it doesn't matter. Any of those false hopes will make it look like folly, because you're just jeopardizing, and not just jeopardizing, right? You're running like a what? A 99% chance of disaster, right? On the like, you're putting all the, all the savings of the entirety of Middle Earth on that one number, right? When you could have played it safe, kept the ring, used it against Sauron, focused all of our resources on fighting the war, whatever it is, right? Those would be the false hopes that make it appear as folly. So again, Gandalf's statements have not been without their sort of philosophical and theological implications, but his response has been entirely practical. Despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt. We do not. There's no reason to give up hope. Amdir, right? It is wisdom to recognize necessity. It's not folly. Despair is inappropriate, and it is not folly. It's wisdom to recognize necessity. If that 1% chance really is the only possible chance of victory, then it's wisdom to recognize the necessity of gambling on that 1%, because everything else is a 100% chance of eventual failure. Everything else. Exactly. It's time for a Hail Elbereth. That's exactly it. Exactly. If there is a chance, it's foolish not to take it. Bjarna's honor. Exactly. Yes. Bjorn, I agree with you that talking about the odds, Gandalf doesn't talk about the odds, right? And I agree with you that I think it's a corollary to the we do not see the end beyond all doubt. A corollary to that would be the odds are not necessarily what you think they are, right? If you believe that the odds before the race or, before the season begins are exactly an accurate prediction of the future, that's also pride, right? That's also not right. Okay. Well, let folly be our cloak, a veil before the eyes of the enemy, for he is very wise, and weighs all things to a nicety in the scales of his malice. But the only measure that he knows is desire for power, and so he judges all hearts. Into his heart the thought will not enter, that any will refuse it, that having the ring we may seek to destroy it. If we seek this, we shall put him out of reckoning. Let folly be our cloak, a veil before the eyes of the enemy. Okay, it seems... In what sense will folly be a veil before the eyes of the enemy? Because he is very wise. Because he... number one, to cling to false hope, if he were in our shoes, would be Sauron, right? That's how he would think, absolutely. If Sauron were here in this council, right? If one of us here had like the wisdom and perspective, but not the evil intent of Sauron, Sauron would totally be saying, take the ring, use the ring, establish, bring about the result that you want to see, right? That would be, make it so, right? That would be Sauron's intent. GDC says he'll never expect us to do something this stupid. Yeah, like that. Exactly. Because Sauron is very wise, right? He is going to know wherein exactly is Sauron's calculation as he weighs all things to a nicety in the scales of his malice. Why is it that Sauron is going to come to a different sum at the end of the calculation than they are and not guess what they're doing? And the answer is all about Elrond's speech about not using the ring. Why it's not worth it. Why should they use the ring to overcome their enemy? Again, and this is, as I said at the time, the argument given in the movie always struck me as not only a cop-out, but, mostly a cop-out, but just kind of pitiful, right? We can't use it. It just won't work for us, right? No, it's so much more interesting than that. It absolutely would work for them. And in fact, they stand a really good chance of winning the war. Really good chance of winning the war. It is because the use of the ring is such a good idea that they must not do it. Because the cost would be too high. And that's where their calculus is different from Sauron's, right? Because the only measure that he knows is desire, the desire for power. The only measure that he knows, right? How does he do his decision making? Sauron's decision making is entirely utilitarian. What is most likely to bring about my own power? How am I best calculated to achieve my will? That is the fundamental question with which Sauron approaches things, and it's the only measure that he knows. And so he judges all hearts. Gandalf is banking on the fact that Sauron is going to say, if I were there, I use it 100 times out of 100, right? They're going to be asking right now, how do we achieve our will? And our will is to overthrow our enemy and preserve our peoples, right? That's what they're going to be thinking in their little council there in Rivendell right now. And, yeah. And he's probably heard about it by now because it's been like a year and a half since the council started. So Sauron... Oh, no, wait, I forgot. It didn't actually take that long. But anyway, still, he's going to be saying, in theory, right, they absolutely... This is exactly, JJ. He's looking at what the best way to win is, right? The best way to win. And winning equals achieving your desire, right? Achieving your goals. That's what winning looks like. That's the definition of winning. Obviously, that's the definition of winning. So what's the point of wisdom? The point of wisdom is to be able to calculate with most accuracy and reliability how to achieve that end. And you don't have to be that good at sums in order to come to the right answer of this question. The best way, their only real chance is to use the ring against Sauron. And he's not wrong. That's completely correct. Their only hope of winning the War of the Ring is to use the ring against Sauron. It will not. There's no way they can win this war otherwise. They don't even know all of his military strength yet, and yet they can see that. Even Boromir knows that eventually Gondor is going to be overthrown. They can stand for a while, but eventually. They can delay the march of the enemy up the coast, but, not forever. Erestor knows that they do not have the strength for the finding of the fire in which it was made. We can't invade Mordor again. That's a complete non-starter. We know we can't win this war. We could use the ring. It would be, by far, the best way to do it. Yes, they're saying that losing is preferable to winning in the wrong way, JJ, and that's exactly why they will throw Sauron out of reckoning. Because that does not compute. That does not compute. What possible motivation could they have to do that? Could they have to say, okay, we could win if we do this, so let's not do it, right? Why? Because it's altogether evil. Because it corrupts the heart. All those things that Elrond was saying. Sauron doesn't care, right? He doesn't care. Yeah, and Nancy, you're right. The good guys want to win forever, not just against this Dark Lord, but against all future Dark Lords. Yes, exactly. And Sauron does not see the problem, right? Exactly. Agreed, Bjarnasonar, that's exactly the direction that I was working towards. To Sauron, the idea that the ends might not justify the means is just utterly unthinkable. Absolutely. The whole point is to achieve your ends. That's the only question of means is which means are going to be most effective in bringing about your ends, obviously, right? I mean, who else would think otherwise? What is the point of handicapping yourself in saying, we're not going to win that way, right? We're going to win only this way, or we won't win. Well, guess what? Then you probably won't win, right? I mean, come on now. That is foolish. That is folly to think that way. To turn your back on the possibility of victory. He judges all hearts by the measure that he knows, and that is desire for power. He is going. So Gandalf is saying there is no way he's going to even entertain this idea. He will not be able to imagine that we could turn down the ring, that we could refuse the ring. Yeah. And for Dauntless, I agree. Sauron's problem is that he doesn't realize the good guys want to defeat Sauron and set no one in his place. Exactly. I know you're thinking of Gandalf's speech later with the captains at Minas Tirith. And yes, I agree. But again, that's just another way of saying a similar kind of thing, right? Again, like, what does winning look like? Winning looks like beating your enemy, right? And having the power. Somebody is going to end up with power. It's going to be me or it's going to be one of you, right? The only question is who is going to end up being the one in power, right? Somebody here is going to end up standing on somebody else's neck, right? Whose foot is going to be on whose neck at the end of the day, right? That's the only relevant question to Sauron, because he assumes that that's the only measure that he knows, right, is the desire for power. And so he judges all hearts, right? So that's what Gandalf, I think, is getting at later on, will be getting at later on when he talks about setting no one in his place, right? He cannot imagine a perspective that isn't thinking that way, that does not want to rule. So we'll put him out of reckoning if we think this way. So, okay, so Gandalf, it's not despair and it's not folly. It's wisdom. Wisdom to recognize necessity. Yes, it might seem like a desperate chance, but it is the only chance. And therefore, howsoever desperate it may be, it's wise to go there. And what's more, Sauron will not see this coming. This will be our cloak, a veil before the eyes of the enemy. At least for a while, said Elrond. The road must be trod, but it will be very hard, and neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. This quest may be attempted by the weak, with as much hope as the strong. Yet such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. Right. Mad Violinist says, subtle Elrond. Yes, this does seem like a veiled hint. Is he nominating somebody right now? Right? Is that sounded like a nomination to me, right? That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it is kind of a recruiting speech, right, Flammifer? And obviously, somebody else hears a nomination in this, right? Exactly. Kurtzimus says Bilbo knows a hint when he hears one, and that's where we're going to be going next in the next slide. But hang on a second before we get there. Yeah, exactly. I think Tora Marthin, when he says this quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong, by the weak, he means those who have not yet had lunch and are really looking forward to it. Yeah. Exactly. But hang on. I want to back up on that. I want to back up to a sentence that always, when I think about it, kind of blows my mind a little bit. The road must be trod, but it will be very hard. Okay. The road must be trod. So here he's affirming Gandalf's statement about necessity, right? It's wisdom to recognize necessity when all other courses have been weighed, right? The road must be trod. Yeah, like this is our only option. Did you guys think this was going to be a vote? Right? I'm sorry. Did somebody want to make a counter suggestion? No. We must destroy the ring, right? We must send the ring to the fire. That's pretty well decided now, right? The road must be trod, but it will be very hard. So, okay. So now full stop right there. The road must be trod, but it will be very hard. If you'd never read this before, what would you guess the next sentence would be? The road must be trod, but it will be very hard. Therefore, let us rally all of the resources that we have. No, we do not have the strength for the finding of the fire in which it was made, right? No, we cannot force our way into Mordor. We cannot, attack Mordor and defeat Sauron's armies. No, we can't do that. But this is going to be a hard road, right? So let us find every resource we can possibly find, right, to apply to this situation, right? I mean, like, that's right. So we need to send a hardy crew. Exactly, right? That's enable all buffs and reinforcements. Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what that sounds like, right? It sounds like the setup for the Dirty Dozen, right? Exactly. Yes, that this is exactly what it sounds like, right? And yet his next sentence, in fact, is, and neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. Why not? I mean, would strength and wisdom be a drawback, actually? Like, would it do any harm to have a little bit of the strength and the wisdom along? Right, Burns says, weak and stupid, I'm in. Yeah, I know, right? It's but I mean, this is yeah, Mike, this is a big assertion. I always find, whenever I pause on this sentence, I find it a mind-blowing sentence. Neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. But wait, hang on, Elrond, how do you figure? I mean, I can track with the it's wisdom to recognize necessity thing, right? Okay, right. I get it. It looks like folly, but it only looks like folly if you're clinging to false hope. If it really is the only way, then, like, if it's the best chance that we have, it doesn't matter how small the chance is. It's still the best chance. Okay, fine, right. I get that. Wisdom, fine. It's wisdom. Except now, wait. Having decided to take the course, which has as small a chance of succeeding as any course that we can think of, right? Now the plan is to handicap ourselves as much as possible, right? Since the odds of success are so low, not only needn't we try to increase those odds, but we shouldn't try to increase those odds. Really? Really? Now, I don't think, I don't think that he means it exactly along these lines, right? I mean, we will see, in fact, that both strength and wisdom are going to be supplied to the party, right? It's a reasonably well-balanced party when it comes to it, right? But the plan is not just to send only and exclusively the most incompetent and unlikely people on this trip, right? Not exclusively. Only some of the party is going to fit that description. Yeah. Again, I don't think he is, taking some kind of vow to forbear strength or wisdom. Exactly, Houthcastle. That's just what I was going to say. He's saying they can't trust in wisdom and strength, not that they shouldn't use them. Yes, exactly. Neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. One way to paraphrase it that makes it make a little bit more sense would be to say, no matter how we try to stack the deck in our favor, we've got a pretty bad hand here. I mean, that makes my metaphors. We got a pretty bad hand, right? No matter how we try to play this hand, we're not going to guarantee success. So let's not rely on strength nor wisdom, right? To some extent, I think that he's suggesting that it goes beyond, I think, thinking we can't guarantee success even by packing this team, right, with all of the strength and wisdom at our disposal, right? But I do think also what he's saying is that we can't, this isn't the way. Such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. What Elrond is pointing to is the larger pattern. What's the drift of things here, right? How is the pattern of Providence playing out here? Or to put it in Gamgean terms, what kind of story are we in here? What kind of story is this? Happy ending or sad ending, right? What kind of story is this? And the answer is, it's not a story of heroism, not that kind of heroism. They don't need a hero like Gandalf was looking for in the Shire, in the chapter 1 of The Hobbit, looking for and not finding, right? They don't need a hero, or at least not the kind of hero he was looking for. Instead, they need the kind of hero that Gandalf actually found, right? Ironically. Yeah, that's the kind of hero that we need. That's the kind of story that we're in here. Such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. This is Elrond saying, this might seem counterintuitive, right? That we shouldn't try to maximize our strength and wisdom here, right? It might seem counterintuitive, but this is the kind of story that we're in right now. We do not need to find the greatest among us, the greatest and most powerful among us, to take the ring to Mordor. That would be the wrong call. And exactly as several of you were were suggesting before, I think the thing which is most powerfully informing Elrond's conclusion there is the speech that he made about the ring, right? Remember, one of the questions about the ring from the beginning was who's going to carry it, right? Who can be trusted to be the custodian of the ring, even, right? That's when Bombadil came up before. And one of the reasons why we were talking about Bombadil earlier. And the answer is not the strong or the wise. As Elrond tried to make really clear, the strong and the wise are the ones who are most at risk, as again, several of you were saying earlier on. Exactly, Bjorning. We don't need Turin or Beren or Gil-galad or Elendil. Yeah, no, we don't. We need something else. In fact, I think that Elrond Flammifer, I think you're not thinking big enough. Flammifer says, have we ever seen small hands doing deeds that move the wheels of the world because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere? Hundreds of times. Like in the whole Silmarillion, we see that. It's just that the scale is different, right? You know whose hands are small? Turin's, Beren's, Earendil's, Fingolfin's. Those are all small hands, while the eyes of the great, Melkor, Manwë, Ulmo, are elsewhere. All of the incarnate races have quite small hands in the Silmarillion, right? Everything's at a different scale in the now from where we're standing in the Third Age. Those seem like very big hands indeed, right? But everything's smaller in the Third Age, right? We see everything scaling down, right? But that pattern is Earendil going to Valinor is an example of small hands doing the deed because he must. He has no, what else can he do, right? Earendil turning his boat around and going to Valinor is exactly an example of small hands doing a deed that moves the wheels of the world because he must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's probably the only reason it worked for Thales. Exactly. It didn't work. Varanwe doesn't get there, right? Turgon keeps sending ships, right? Keeps sending mariners into the West, and it doesn't work, right? Why? Because it wasn't that kind of story. Because this situation had not emerged yet. Small hands doing them because they must while the eyes of the great are elsewhere hadn't come about yet. And then, of course, Captain Mo, we see, talking of small hands, we can't forget Bilbo finding the ring. Absolutely. Absolutely. The ring has been brought to this room or place. They're outside, I think, by small hands, not just Frodo's or Bilbo's. Even Gollum's hands are small hands that move the wheels of the world, right? Gollum's hands did that also. Exactly, yeah. Arend was just saying the same thing in the end. Gollum's mean little hands. Yeah. He does horrible things with his small hands, but small hands they remain, nevertheless. And he has moved the wheels of the world and shall move them yet more before the end, right? Don't forget, it is Gollum's small hands which are going to bring about, and teeth, which are going to bring about the end, right? Sharp teeth oft moved the wheels of the world. Exactly. Yeah. Diggle. Yeah, absolutely. Smith's small hands, which briefly moved the wheels of the world. Absolutely. Yes. So again, I think what we see Elrond doing here is reading events. Right. Again, sort of saying, what kind of story are we in? Right. What is the drift of things? How is this story supposed to go? Right. What direction are we being pointed in? Have we been given marching orders in a sense? Right. Have we been given suggestions? Has this situation been orchestrated in such a way as to point us in a clear direction? And his answer is absolutely yes. And the direction is that neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon this road, despite the fact that it's very hard, which would seem to indicate maximizing strength and wisdom. And yet, that's not the direction that all of this is pointing. And the ring is the key element, right? They have a deed that they have to attempt, as Frodo will say later on, right? There's a deed they have to attempt. It's clear to Elrond what has to happen. We have to bring the ring to the fire. But how? How can we bring the ring to the fire? Because as he goes on to say, none of the wise can be trusted with it. And he's very right to say that. Think about what happens to Frodo in Mordor, right? None of the wise, I think, could have resisted as Frodo did. None of the wise could have resisted as Frodo did. And we'll get glimpses of that. We'll get glimpses of that later on. I think the one who really proves that is Sam. Of course, because obviously. Exactly. Ray is quoting, "Believe rather that it is so ordered that we who sit here and none others must now find counsel for the peril of the world." Yes. And Ray, that's a really good illustration of the way in which Elrond is kind of reading things, right? The way in which he's saying, like, okay, this is the story that we're in, right? It has come to this point. We have been gathered together in order to make this decision. And look, these are the parameters that we've been given to work with. And it's pretty clear. If we try to maximize strength or wisdom, that's foolishness. It would seem foolish not to, but that would be foolishness. That would lead to failure, almost certain failure, if we hand the ring to one of the wise, to one of the great. This quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. May be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. Strength is not going to be the key to success on that. And again, it is actively counter-indicated. Yes, because strength in the traditional sense is not the quality relevant to this trial. Bjarnasonar, I agree. Yeah. Now, Matt, you made the point before that you believe there to be a very pregnant pause between the end of that statement. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. And Bilbo's sudden exclamation, right? I agree. I do think that it is very likely that there's a very pregnant pause there. What does this mean? What even are they suggesting, right? One last thing, I say last. One last thing I want to suggest here. I believe that when Erestor says, as I said before, I believe that when Erestor says, "What strength have we for the finding of the fire in which it was made?" I think he's thinking military strength right there. Elrond, Gandalf and then Elrond, neither of them seem to address the military question exactly. Yeah. Good. Oh, very good. Yes. Likely Abbot was saying, this is a counsel taken stronger than Morgul spells. Yeah, there it is. There it is, Boromir. I hope that was worth a journey of 110 days to hear, right? Because Elrond just did it, right? He just gave the counsel, just gave the wisdom, right? There it is. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. But anyway, when did we shift? Elrond, I think, is where we shift. Gandalf doesn't really address, like, he's not talking about armies exactly. He's just talking about the general objective, destroying the ring, right? I don't think that Gandalf, in his whole speech there, is really talking about making suggestions about the mechanism yet, right? About the methods. But Elrond, I think, is. And I think when he says the road must be trod, I think it's clear that although Erestor was talking, I believe, about armies, Elrond is already thinking about a fellowship. Elrond is already thinking about, an adventuring party, not about a military exploit, when he talks about the road and this quest, right? He's clearly there already. This is not a war. This is a quest. This is a quest that may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. When I just talked about that sentence, I jumped right to the weak and strong part, and I skipped this quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. But I think that that's really important, nevertheless. Yeah, Admiral Malcontent. I agree. By the way, congratulations, Admiral Malcontent, and catching up and joining us tonight. I did see that earlier on. But you're right. He kind of skips over the final decision and goes straight to picking the party. Absolutely. Absolutely, he does. He already said it before. We must send the ring to the fire, right? There were still a bunch of questions and objections following that, but we're moving forward, right? And again, notice in doing so, he is following directly the path that Erestor laid out there in that first paragraph, which is again why I think Erestor is like, I would love to have Erestor as like my second in command, right? He is here. He's an awesome wingman. Erestor is. Yes. And no, Eruahil, this is not a democracy. It's not now it sounded like it might be, like when Gandalf says, what, shall we do with it? It sounds like he's taking proposals, right? There's that's an RFP or something that Gandalf is putting out, right? But no, that's not actually how this is going to play out. Elrond is saying this is the only way. This quest may be attempted. So notice how he's already he's turned that with no fanfare at all, right? This quest. Oh, and by the way, we are talking about a quest, not an invasion. Nobody clarifies that, right? They've been talking about invasion at many points before this, right? Elrond is immediately talking about quests. And by the way, Verlin Flieger is very interested, has spoken many times about how interesting it is. Tolkien's choice of words here. Quest. The word quest is, it might seem obvious to us, like obvious that Tolkien would choose that word. Like, of course it's a quest, right? In part because that word has become so much more common than it used to be, in part because of Tolkien's usage of it, right? I mean, there's a reason that we all go on so many quests in, Lotro and stuff, right? It's become a big video game word. It's become a big role-playing game word. It's now an almost cliche word, right? Within the whole sort of fantasy subculture that has grown up since the time of Tolkien. But it is not a no-brainer that Tolkien's going to use that word. And even thinking about it in the context, or especially thinking about it in sort of the context in which it was used, right? What it would have meant to Tolkien, right? Not what it has come to mean since Tolkien, right? But what it would have meant at that point. I thought it was used to refer to a tribe, not that kind of quest. What does the word mean? Quest? What does it mean? What is a quest? What is a quest? Yeah, it shares a root with question. I believe that to be true. Yes. To ask, to to seek. Yes, a questing dog is on a trail, right? Pursuing game, right? Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah, Karita and several others can't help thinking about the questing beast from Maori, which is called that because it makes a sound like the baying of hounds when they're questing, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, questare in Latin means to ask. And Valor, that's exactly why Verlin finds this such an interesting word for him to choose, because it's a very Latinate word, and it's a very Eruachil, as you say, an old French word as well. It's from Latin through French, which is unusual. Not unknown by any means. Tolkien's aversion to French things gets way overstated by a lot of people. But it's a very important word in especially Arthurian tradition. When you're on a quest, you might be seeking answers, like the judicial sense of the word quest, to be seeking the truth, right? That's why you have an inquest, right? To find out what happened. So you're asking questions, right? In an inquest. You may very well be on the quest for the Holy Grail, which is like the quest of the medieval tradition. And in fact, like, that's what I would say, honestly. If you just were to say, if you are someone who has read the books that Tolkien has read, and you're in, the 1940s, early 1940s, and you say this quest may be attempted, what's the first thing that you're thinking of? And I think the answer is the quest for the Holy Grail. I do. That's a little bit unexpected. And you're right that several of you have pointed out that this seems like an unquest, right? In a sense, it's a strange word to use because what they're doing is almost the opposite of a quest. When you go on a quest, you're seeking something. You're trying to find something, right? And Frodo has already pointed out the irony of his journey compared to Bilbo's, right? Bilbo went on a treasure hunt, there and back again, right? And whereas Frodo is going to just go there and not come back again as far as he can see. Bilbo went to find a treasure. He goes to lose one, right? So he's already talked about that. Now, they're seeking the cracks of doom, yes, but again, not in a questing sense. Not in a questing sense. Again, they know where they are, right? If you can go on it's perfectly questy, right? Eärendil was on a quest when he was seeking Valinor. He knew what he was seeking, but he had no idea how he could possibly get there. He was vaguely in the west, right? But that was a quest. That was a quest. When he turns his boat around, he's on a quest. They have a destination. They have a goal. They have a task to perform, but they don't really have a quest exactly. And as I say, Frodo's already kind of put his fingers on the irony there, and I think that there is an irony here. I think that there's an intended irony here. If they are on a quest, if they're seeking something, if they're asking something, if they're seeking an answer, if they're seeking, a treasure, if they're going out to find something unknown, which again, these are the things that's what you hunt for. When you're hunting, you're looking for something, right? It's quest. If there's any sense in which that's happening, the sense in which it's true is what? It's pretty abstract. They're searching for hope, for the solution, right? For the yeah, I can't help but think along the same lines that several of you are thinking. One of the other things in the context of the Holy Grail quest, which is like the big quest, right? The main thing. I still think the primary thing that, and I would be interested if anyone can come up with a counterexample. If anybody can come up with something that is more likely to be associated with the word quest in 1940 by somebody of Tolkien's reading, than the quest for the Holy Grail, I'd be interested to know what it is, because I really do think that's would be the primary association with the concept of the quest. But the Holy Grail and the quest for the Grail, which was, you know, becomes this literally this consuming thing. It's the consummation of the Arthurian story. It's like the Arthurian court is consumed. It reaches its apex, right? Galahad comes to the court and the round table is complete for the only time it's ever complete in its entire history. And then it's gone and it's shattered and it's never going to recover after the quest for the Grail, right? But it is... there's something holy. There's something sacred. There's something almost... It's the quest... Through the quest for the Holy Grail, it begins... The concept of quest seems almost to be associated with faith in this sense. So anyway, I don't know. This is all me thinking more about why Elrond calls it that. The significance of Elrond saying this quest. He's just dubbed this thing a quest, right? Is quest used in Gowan and the Green Knight? I don't think so. I think that word's too French for Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I don't think so. Gawain seeks for, the Green Chapel. He's looking for it. But I don't think he's on a quest. I don't think that word is used. Maybe. I don't think it is. But if it is, I would bet that it's used in a hunting context. Like questing, more literally, but I don't think so. Beowulf, Mad Violinist? No, nobody quests in Beowulf. No questing. I'm sure there's no questing in Beowulf. Feel super confident about that. Because that's almost impossible. Quest being a Latinate word. Yeah, exactly. Quest entered English in the 1300s. So it could be. Gawain is after that. It's right around that time. Cervantes? Oh yeah. Don Quixote goes on all sorts of quests, right? Because he's post that whole chivalric tradition. But yeah, no, I questing in this larger sense, like not in the literal sense of holding a trial in order to find the answer to a question like an inquest, or in the literal sense of hunting for game, like hounds questing, or the sound that's emerging from the stomach of the questing beast by some means. And I still don't understand. I've never understood the questing beast, and it's why it's so awesome. But anyway, yeah. Would Cervantes have known the Arthur stories? Definitely. Yeah, he cites them. I mean, yeah, would they be coming in? Does he? I don't know which versions of the stories he used, but Don Quixote definitely alludes to Arthurian knights. Yeah, definitely. They're not his favorite knights. He's much more fond of El Cid than he is of Lancelot, but he knows Lancelot for sure. But that's different story. Someday, when everyone has decided they're really gluttons for punishment, we're going to elect Don Quixote in Mythgard Academy and spend a good year and a half on that. But anyway, yeah, so I'm sure some modern translations of Sir Gawain the Green Knight might use the word. I'm just saying I'm sorry, I was thinking of the Middle English when we're asking about that. Yeah. Oh, only if it's in Spanish. Oh, then it won't be me, man. That's why that would be my problem. Is I am a man of small Spanish and less Italian. So Okay, it shows up in an e-text search of the Tolkien edited edition. Exactly. Okay, twice. So Tolkien used it. That's interesting. That's it. Somebody post that. Somebody post the places where Tolkien uses it in his translation of Sir Gawain. I'd like to see that. That's really interesting. In fact, we'll start with that next time. If somebody can show me that, give me the lines in Sir Gawain where Tolkien uses the word quest in his translation, and we'll start there next time, because that's a really fun roundabout way to think about answering the question, what does the word quest mean to Tolkien? Right. Yeah, exactly, Kurt. So we're going to start off with a quest about the word quest, and then we'll move on to Bilbo. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. All right. So we got a brief glimpse of the next slide, right? But let's not rush things. Okay. Thank you for joining us. It's field trip time, so we're going to do that now. But thank you for joining us here this evening. We're gonna do our field trip, so feel free to join us for that. We're going back to the Wells of Langflood again. And Valoria, you're with us again here tonight, right?
Yes, I am. Good evening, everyone.
Very good. Good evening, everybody. So good to have you back.
Oh, thanks.
And glad you're feeling better and things. I know last week it was acts of nature, right? It was
that was force majeure.
Yeah, exactly. So your house didn't get blown down or anything?
Oh, thank the Lord, no.
Excellent.
Yeah. Just really bored kids who did not charge the devices.
Right, exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna head over with my milestone. So I'll meet you guys in Limlock, and then I was kicking myself last week, Valoria, because there's actually a stable master right inside the door of the dwarf place in there, but I didn't even notice it until after we'd gotten like deep inside, and then I looked back at the map and I'm like, oh my gosh, look, there was a stable master right there, and I didn't even see it. I'm going to totally go to the stable master there so that we can use that as a waypoint if we need to, but maybe we won't even need to after today. We'll see.
People up here.
Boy, it's a grim day in Limlock today.
Yeah. So to further our thing on quest, actually, acquistare actually was the old French, not the Latin. The Latin is querare, where we get the word things like query.
Right.
But what was it? I gotta look at it again. Quasitus is actually past tense for the verb to ask. So it means someone who has sought, who has asked, and so it's interesting to put it in that sense that our modern word quest comes from a past participle of it.
That's interesting.
Well, it implies that they're telling the tale later.
Right. So you're saying it's only a quest if you live to come back and tell the story afterwards?
Men don't get girls.
Yeah.
All right. Got to convert to raid. Still adding everybody.
Okay, no problem. Boy, we are having dreadful weather in the Wells of Langflood today.
Yeah, seems to be spreading all over the place right now.
Yeah.
Let's see. Get Arson. Yes. Okay.
You know,
All right.
I'm interested in the fact that the only building in this whole village which looks like a Rohirric mead hall is in fact the barn. Right? Like, this is a thatched barn. Well, it's a shingled barn, technically. I don't know if any brigands drink in the reek in there, though it wouldn't surprise me in the least. No offense to the people of Limlock, but yeah, I it's interesting that there is actually a parallel between their barn architecture and their, like, it's sort of gives some further credence to Saruman's barb. Okay, all right, so let us head off. I see I've decided to war steed it tonight. I don't know when I made that decision, but I think it was a dubious one. We'll see how we do. Can't see anything. Running into trees already. Oh, this is going perfectly well. I'm war steeding in precisely the way that I always end up war steeding, which is running into trees and getting stuck. So that's very good.
Forget the mobs.
Let's ditch that idea. Okay. Okay, sorry. Okay, got left behind there. Okay. All right, the Floodfells. Right, never so apt a name as today. Wouldn't it be cool if the level of the river rose when it was raining? I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Possibly inconvenient, but...
yeah, it'd be a thing where people's feet would stop touching the ground at a certain point.
Right, yeah, that's true. It'd be difficult. Not really worth, phasing the whole landscape for the sake of the game,
not exactly. Yeah, not exactly worth completely converting the Z-plane.
Yeah, probably not, but still, would be cool.
In theory, everything is cool.
Okay. Let's see. Of course, I can't see any. I think this is going, however, to
yeah. See, we
wreak
got the big old
havoc on
statue
my
there.
original plan, which was my original plan was because you remember when we went up to the cliffs on top of this hill on the other side of the river here, and we saw the ruins across the river. And my immediate impulse was to resist looking at them because I wanted to save them for later. And so tonight I was all prepared to indulge myself and look out across the way at the ruins. But I think that plan is being undermined by the...
No, I guess we learned if you have the view, use it, huh?
Right. Well, I guess we can still see something here. Okay.
We had that trouble in Angmar too, if I recall.
Yeah, we did. Wait, where am I going? Did I lose? What direction am I headed? Where am I going? I lost everything. Okay, there I am. Sorry. Apologies. All right. Here we are, not falling off the cliff. Okay. Great. All right. Well, we can't see very well what's on the other side inside there, but we can see this, which is what I was chiefly resisting looking at. Is this the same? It looks dwarvish. The knotwork looks dwarvish.
Yep. It's got that Art Deco geometrical thing going.
What we don't necessarily see, I'm looking for, but do we see the interlocking rings? Maybe we do. Maybe right below on here, it's not super clear from this orientation, but or from this distance rather. But maybe...
I think so. It's next to those little diamond motif, right? It's like diamond and then interlocking rings.
Right, so we've got the interlocking, like, large gray diamonds along the big bands, right, that we see top and bottom of this middle windowless story here. Unless those are window slits, which I think
those are. I think those are windows. We've seen windows like that in dwarf architecture.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Just to kind of let in shafts of light from the outside, rather than to stand next to
What?
and look out, right?
What would we want to look at outside for?
Exactly, right? Right. So, okay. So above that, I think I think we can, actually, yeah, we can see them here in between these diamonds in that dark one. Okay, yeah, they're there. They're there. Okay. So yes, so this is dwarf architecture, and it's dwarf architecture that matches the bridge
Yes.
rather than the inland dwarf architecture.
Mm-hmm. And
Now,
we think this went up further, like, because
see,
those columns sticking up are kind of weird.
They are. Oh, you mean like what used to happen up top there?
Yeah, was there like another tier to this birthday cake here?
You know, you'd think there would almost have to be, wouldn't you? Who would put
Yeah.
Who would put, capitals like that on top of pillars that went to nowhere?
Door capital.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some. Well, it looks like there's some sort of wrecked platform to the left of it. And little. Yeah, I can see some.
And then we've got something's
sticking
tumbled
out here.
down
Yeah.
the hill. Looks more like more pillars in a wall. Like the thing at the bottom there looks like a broken off buttress that used to connect. You can see where there was a flying buttress that's sticking out the side of the wall up there.
Yeah. Have we seen those before? The buttresses in dwarf architecture?
I think so. I mean, again, this is reminding me of the bridge. I think this is consistent with the bridge, but it's very much not consistent. So let's go in and look at let me continue going straight and not off the cliff. Sorry, I'm having directional difficulties here tonight. Right. So it's very much not consistent with the dwarf architecture from inland here. What's this place called? I always forget the name of this place. Begins with an S, I think, or unless it doesn't.
I'd have to stop writing to look it up. I'll look it up in just a second.
Yeah, I'd have to look on my map. What's it called?
It's like Sidcar Selwyn or something.
Something or the other. Anyway, we'll see it in a moment.
Yes.
But it's very different from in here. And so my primary question is, which came first? Like, which is older? And my second question is, am I in fact going in the right direction? Because I think I got off track there. And there's more ruins over there. Well, we're headed in that direction. We'll head over there and see what we see.
Oh, we're going right up to the mountain, aren't we?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. There should be. Isn't there a bridge somewhere around here?
I think there wasn't. I think we came to that conclusion last time.
Sundergrot. That's of course what it is.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, it's up behind these rocks. That's where it is.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Pretty sure it's up here. We got to go over the rocks, and there it is. Yes, indeed.
Someone help me out with this. I can't get up.
Uh-oh.
How have I not been dismounted already?
Yeah, I can't believe my horse survived that whole trip.
Well, this would be a weird novelty if I die, but my horse doesn't.
Really? I didn't know that was possible.
I didn't know that was possible either, but I'm down like 9,000.
Well, I got down 9,000 from one shot. Oh, look, some folks came on ahead.
Oh, yeah,
goblins. That was very kind.
Yeah, that was nice. Yippee.
Okay, so Sundergrot, and people are telling me there isn't actually a stable master there. Like it's just a tease on the map. There's no.
That's not fair. Is it like a dwarven one?
Weird. Okay.
Is it like a Moria stable?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, let's go down then. I shan't bother myself looking for the stable master. Let's go ruin hunting along this side so I'm trying to understand the line, right? That is to say, the line between the dwarves who build in blue stone and the dwarves who are building in the gray stone. And I want to know which is the elder, and therefore to try to piece together what is the story here. How did we get the two dwarves? Because I'm still thinking that the bridge was like a Third Age thing. The bridge down there, the first bridge that we crossed over, I'm still thinking that that was a Third Age thing. Okay, we've got
To what purpose?
To go. So my theory was that it was to be a way for a dwarves to cross, a dwarf trade route, basically. A dwarf trade route into Rovanian, like into the forest, both to be able to trade with the elves and to be able to trade with the men of Rovanian as well. This architecture strikes me as more long-beardy
It does.
than the blue architecture.
Yeah, it's that greystone.
Yeah. And the way that they use the geometric shapes with the diamonds and the similarities between some of this stuff and the designs that I know we see in Moria, whereas there's nothing in Moria that's quite like, that I recall anyway, that's quite like the blue stone with the gilded trim that we see there at Sundergrot.
We've lost the sunburst motif and we've moved to something that looks more like a snowflake.
Right inside the diamonds, yes.
Inside the gold.
Yes.
On the bridge, that was a sunburst motif.
But we did see some of these. I'm pretty sure we saw some of these also near the bridge, the snowflake ones.
I don't remember a snowflake at all.
No?
Just sunburst.
I think we saw them, but yeah. No, Hologra, I wasn't talking about the main map. I was talking about the Stable Master that's in the Sundergrot map. Like, I noticed it when we were walking around Sundergrot last time. I can't walk this way? This is... okay. Can I walk down from this direction?
Oh, another dwarf marker.
Oh, yeah? Oh, right up there. And this is... Right. You can't get there from here, so that's tantalizing. But
dwarf mark.
Notice the dwarf marker bears one of those sunbursts.
Yeah, see? That was the motif I was looking for on this guy.
Yeah.
Do you come around from the other side? How do you get up?
Oh, man. You go down this way?
Oh, yep. Up and around.
Okay, right up and around. What is
I hate
this?
jumping onto black land. I never know if it's something that hasn't loaded properly.
What is this spiky thing? It's got to be a goblin thing, right? The rivets, the metal spikes.
Yeah.
We've seen spiky things like this. That's not a dwarf thing. Yeah.
Yeah. This is something we've seen on the trebuchets.
What on earth did that... How did somebody... Who dropped that halfway down the cliff? That's just weird.
I don't know.
Where would it have dropped from?
Huh.
Old dwarf mark used in surveying lands for potential mining opportunities. Same as last one.
Yeah.
It looks like all of this is the remains of a war engine, like it fell apart here and then the spire fell down.
Yeah, I think these beams that I'm walking on here.
Yeah, this A-frame up here.
Yeah, some kind of orc or goblin construction gone horribly awry, from which the big spiky thing tumbled long after the dwarf ruins had tumbled.
I'm getting flashbacks to the High Elf tutorial.
Yeah.
We have to walk all over stuff like this.
I can't help but admit that at least from right here, like counting this ruin looks a great deal more ruinous than Sundergrot. So I'm thinking perhaps it's older. Well, let's keep going. Yeah, we got the big wheel over there too. So I have no idea what the goblin's plan is there.
It went awry no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, what are they besieging even? Like, apart from the, questionable wisdom of constructing an enormous siege engine up here on top of the cliff. What were they planning to attack with it up here?
Maybe they're trying their own cloak of folly.
Yeah,
Except it's extra stupid.
Extra strong cloak. That means the more stupid your plan, the less likely they are to see it coming. That's right. Okay, so we're still headed down towards the... Yep, we're headed down in the right direction. Just want to make sure I hadn't gone wandering off. I didn't think I had.
Beg the question, when is a stupid plan a cunning plan, and when is a stupid plan a stupid plan?
Right, yeah. Oh, here we are at some palisades. Okay. So we have come to Stramvarth. Okay. Now, excellent wall, orcs. That's good. I just had to kind of go around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got lots of little orc tents here.
And some dwarven ruins with the sunburst motif.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're pretty ruinous.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it just depends on how badly they got beat up based on where they're positioned. Like maybe one's more exposed to the elements.
Yeah, it's possibly. Yes, JJ says, goblins make no beautiful things, but they make many mediocre, half-finished ones. Yes, exactly. Oh, now this is interesting. Not the fact that I'm on fire, but down here. Here's those pillars. Okay. So we have a flight of stairs leading up to... Okay, look at the flooring here. Oh, there's a lot of rubbish. Stop setting me on fire. You're just being annoying. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that these are... Yeah, dwarf pillars, obviously. We've got the rings, the interlocked rings all the way up. So, sure. What's this button in the middle?
Maybe it was mounted on something like a soul.
Huh, and look at the...
It is placed perfectly in the center.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a well covering.
Oh, you think?
It's a well covering. You'd put your hooks in those holes to help haul it up. You
Maybe.
need help, of course.
Maybe.
But the outside looks a lot like the wells we see in Moria.
So this would be... This is on top of... We saw from down on the other side when we could see... Oh, look, what a lovely view of the bridge. When we could see from the side over there, we saw the whole sort of hall, right, that's below us, with the buttress that's broken off, and those sunlight slits in the walls of it there, which suggests that there's something down there. But that's what the well here leads to, if it's a well.
Or a manhole cover?
Manhole cover. Maybe this was like a spiral staircase that came up here. Because they certainly, the dwarves wouldn't have been approaching this from the land side, right?
Yeah. And the fact that there's nothing in between these columns, no sign of a wall or anything, indicates this is an open air area. So
yeah,
maybe this was like, this led you down to the fortified part of the dwarf structure, and this part was the open part where you'd have your range or something, or your lookouts. Right,
maybe. That is an interesting point. Stunduck is pointing out that the cross in the middle of the, that goes across this whole area is exactly north, south, east, west aligned, which I was just seeing that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe there was
It
a
is.
sundial or something here.
Yeah. That's actually a really interesting idea too. That it could have been some kind of timekeeping or time measuring device. Yeah,
Yeah,
an
all
astrological
these
outlook for calculating Durin's day, says Nancy L.
these
Yeah.
pillars would help with that too.
Right. Maybe. Are the pillars placed? Yes, the pillars are placed exactly symmetrically. Though
4,
there are
5,
no
6.
pillars to what direction? The northwest.
They could have fallen down though.
No, I think the stairs are here instead.
Oh, so
I mean,
Oh,
there is
the
some
pillar-
rubble around here, but
yeah. There's some columns that fell down over here. You can see.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, it does look
Or
like
maybe
something
just-
used to be there.
Well, if it's sundial aligned northwest, you'd only need it on one side to get your bearings.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Where have we seen this floor pattern? You can see it most clearly right here by the stairs. This sort of bronze.
Oh wow!
I know we've seen that before. And there's the
Yeah.
sunburst you see behind it, and the bigger pattern is the sunburst
What was that, Driz?
Memoria.
in Moria.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I thought it might be something like that.
Was it near like Mazarbul or something like that?
Possibly. Yeah, I don't remember where exactly, but we'll have plenty of time to study Moria later. And
Yeah.
we'll need it. I was saying last
Yes,
week,
we will.
Valoria, that I think that Moria may be the only place in the game where it will take us longer to explore the terrain in the game than it will to discuss the passages in the text. We'll have to see. It'll be
Well,
an interesting race between our...
Yeah, I am
our-
looking forward to seeing Holland in depth.
Yes, that'll be fun. Yeah, okay. But anyway, so I am beginning to think that the pillars that there was no roof over this place, which then raises the question of why there are the capitals on top of the pillars, and I don't know, unless you're dwarves and that's just what you do. Are those eagles that I'm seeing in the sky over there?
I hope they are.
The eagles flying over. I mean, I think they seem to be right.
They are circling.
There are definitely eagles. And
Oh, okay. Oh, good to know.
Okay. Circling around. What am I facing? Oh, I'm facing down towards the Carrick is where I'm facing. Vaguely. Okay. A little uphill. So that's above the eagle's iris, basically, is where they're circling. Okay. All right. So, final conclusions. What do we think? Which came first, Sundergrot or this? I think this. I think this may be older. And what is this? Why is this? Why have the dwarves built the bridge and on this promontory here? And I think the answer has to be like what you can see from up here. Oh, there's a sentinel who's reemerged up here. But when you come up here to where the sentinel has built this convenient place, what can you see? The bridge, right? This promontory commands that whole area. So this is a very sensible place from which you would want to, to have a lookout over your road and your bridge.
Protect your investments.
To protect. I mean, yeah, you could command this whole area, with artillery as well. So sure. I mean, this would be a very important defensive spot because it's even higher than the immediate other bank across the way. So you're commanding the whole area from this promontory. So I think it's the people who are interested in that bridge who are interested in this promontory. So therefore, I got to think the bridge, this construction, the halfway construction, the one halfway up the road, up the river there, whatever that was meant to be. must have come first and Sundergrot must have come later. So maybe when Moria was on the wane, whoever, if that's another clan of dwarves who built Sundergrot, which I suspect might be the case.
Maybe, yeah.
That they kind of came as the power of Moria was waning. I know we're far from Moria. We're pretty high up the mountains, but Moria and Moria's influence was very large, and we're not so far away from where the dwarves of Moria would have been coming out, in order to trade and whatnot. So,
and this directly parallels a lot of the stuff we've seen in Rudar and Elven structures we've seen overlooking rivers.
Yes. Yes, I don't know the story, unless, it's just filling a void that's being left by Moria as Moria declines slowly and then rapidly. Because I think it did decline. I think that Moria must have declined after Eregion declined. I mean, that Moria would have taken a bit of a hit from the fall of Eregion, I believe.
True,
anyway.
But what we saw in common with the Elven and the Redaran structures, it was a river that was a common thoroughfare for travel and trade.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this might have just been a place to overlook boat trade.
Right. Yes, right, to protect boats on the river, possibly. Because, of course, that's another potential trade route that I was leaving out. Not only can you trade to the Wood Elves and to the Kingdom of Rovanian earlier in the Third Age, you can also trade down the river. Boromir might not have heard of anybody coming down the river to trade in his lifetime, but in earlier lifetimes they certainly would have done.
Yeah, before it was crawling with orcs.
Exactly. That's why the Portage Way was built, after all. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's interesting. So let's see. So where do we go next time? Next time we've explored. I think next time we start at Limlock again, and this time we loop around and we go up and look at the next bridge.
Good.
That's what I'm thinking. We head up towards. Maybe we get as far as this next stable master up here, and see if we can move our base of operations up closer to our base camp, up closer to Fromsburg there, which I'm still itching to get to. But anyway, okay, cool, awesome. Thanks everybody for joining us. Fun field trip, fun discussion here today. I have really enjoyed this session. Glad that you could join me, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you, Valory. Good night now.